I want to tell you about the day I realized my own granddaughter was trying to kill me. Not in some quick, dramatic way like you see in the movies. No gunshots, no car accidents, no dramatic confrontations. She was doing it slowly, methodically, one pill at a time, making it look like I was just another sick old lady losing her grip on life. My name is Margaret Ann Holloway, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 76 years old, and I live in Beaumont, Louisiana, a small town about 40 minutes outside of Baton Rouge. Before I tell you the rest of this story, I want you to do something for me. If you have elderly parents, grandparents, or loved ones in your life, I need you to stay with me until the end of this. Because what happened to me could happen to them. And by the time I'm done, you'll know exactly how to spot the warning signs I missed. Trust me, this isn't just my story. This could save someone you love. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Population 4,312, though that number keeps shrinking as young folks move away to the cities. I've lived in Beaumont my entire life, raised 3 children here, buried my husband Harold here 12 years ago, and always figured I'd die here too. I just didn't think my granddaughter would be the one to arrange it. The whole thing started so innocently. It was March of last year when my daughter Caroline called me up on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it was a Tuesday because that's the day I always do my grocery shopping at Piggly Wiggly, have done for 40 years, and I was just getting ready to head out when the phone rang. "Mama," Caroline said, and I could hear that tone in her voice, that careful, worried tone that mothers learn to recognize in their children, no matter how old those children get. "Mama," I've been thinking, "you're living in that big house all by yourself. You're 76 years old. What if something happens? What if you fall and there's nobody there to help you?" "I'm fine, Caroline," I told her, which was the truth. I might be 76, but I'm in good health. I walk 3 miles every morning. I do my own cooking and cleaning. I volunteer at the church 3 days a week. My doctor, Dr. Patricia Chen, tells me at every checkup that I'm healthier than most people 20 years younger. But Caroline wasn't having it. "Mama, just hear me out. Ashley's been looking for a place to stay. Her lease is up next month, and she's having trouble finding something affordable. What if she moved in with you? She could help around the house, do the heavy lifting, keep you company, and you wouldn't have to worry about being alone." Ashley, my granddaughter. Caroline's oldest daughter, 28 years old, beautiful girl with that dark hair and those big brown eyes that run in our family. I hadn't seen much of Ashley in the past few years. She'd moved to New Orleans after college, worked in marketing or communications or something like that. We'd talk on the phone occasionally, see each other at Christmas and Thanksgiving, but we weren't particularly close. The truth is, Ashley had always been a little distant with me. Even as a child, she was polite but never warm. Never the type to run up and hug her grandma, never interested in baking cookies together or hearing stories about the old days. Caroline always made excuses for it, said Ashley was just more reserved, more independent. I figured that's just how some kids are. But living with me, I wasn't sure about that. I liked my independence. I liked my quiet house and my routines and not having to accommodate anyone else's schedule or preferences. "I don't know, Caroline," I said carefully. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm doing fine on my own." Caroline got that edge in her voice, the one that meant she was about to lay on the guilt. "Mama, Ashley's family, she's your granddaughter, and honestly, she could really use the help right now. Things haven't been going great for her in New Orleans. She lost her job last month, she's behind on rent. She needs a soft place to land while she gets back on her feet." There it was, the real story. Ashley wasn't moving in to help me. She needed help herself. And Caroline, being Caroline, was trying to frame it as me doing Ashley a favor when really it was Ashley who needed the favor. But that's how families work, isn't it? You help each other. And despite my reservations, despite that little voice in the back of my head that said maybe this wasn't a good idea, I said yes. "All right," I told Caroline. "Ashley can move in, but just temporarily until she finds a job and gets back on her feet. A few months, maybe." "Oh, Mama, thank you," Caroline gushed. "You're not going to regret this. Ashley will be such a help to you, and it'll be good for both of you to have company." I hung up the phone and looked around my quiet, peaceful house. The house Harold and I bought in 1972, the house where we raised our 3 children, the house that held 50 years of memories in every corner. And I wondered what I just agreed to. Ashley moved in on a Saturday in early April. She showed up with her car packed full of boxes and suitcases, more stuff than I would have thought a 28-year-old girl would have. My son Thomas and his wife Barbara came over to help with the heavy lifting. Caroline was there too, supervising and fussing, making sure Ashley got settled into the guest bedroom that used to be her room when she was growing up. "Thanks for doing this, Grandma," Ashley said as she carried a box up the stairs. "I really appreciate it. I promise I won't be in your way." She gave me a quick hug, and I noticed she smelled like expensive perfume, the kind you buy at department stores in the city. For a girl who just lost her job and was supposedly struggling financially, she seemed to be doing all right. But I kept that observation to myself. I'm not the type to judge. People prioritize different things, and maybe perfume was important to Ashley. Maybe it made her feel good when everything else was falling apart. Lord knows, I'd had my own rough patches after Harold died, times when I spent money on silly things just to feel a little bit normal. The first few weeks were fine. Better than fine, actually. Ashley was quiet, kept to herself mostly. She'd sleep late, which I didn't mind since I was an early riser anyway. By the time she came downstairs around 10 or 11, I'd already done my morning walk, had my breakfast, and was usually working in the garden or doing some household project. She'd make herself coffee, scroll through her phone at the kitchen table, maybe eat some toast or cereal. We'd chat a little, nothing deep, just small talk about the weather or what I was planning to make for dinner. Then she'd go back upstairs to her room, and I wouldn't see her again until evening. It was a nice arrangement, really. I got to keep my routines, and she got a free place to stay while she figured out her next move. Caroline called every few days to check in, always asking how it was going, always sounding relieved when I told her everything was fine. It was around week 3 when Ashley started showing more interest in my daily life. She came down one morning while I was sorting my pills at the kitchen table. I take a handful of medications, nothing unusual for someone my age. Blood pressure medication, cholesterol medication, a baby aspirin for heart health, vitamin D because Louisiana doesn't get enough sun apparently, and a calcium supplement for my bones. "Wow, Grandma, that's a lot of pills," Ashley said, pulling up a chair next to me. "Not really," I said. "Pretty standard for someone my age. Dr. Chen has me on a good regimen. Everything's well managed." "Do you ever get them mixed up?" Ashley asked, watching as I filled my weekly pill organizer, one of those plastic containers with little compartments for each day of the week. "Not really. I've been doing this for years. Got my system down." "Still," Ashley said, reaching for my pill bottles. "That seems like a lot to keep track of. What if I helped you? I could fill your organizer every week, make sure you're taking the right pills at the right times." I appreciated the offer, but I didn't need help with my medications. I was perfectly capable of managing them myself. But Ashley seemed genuinely interested in being helpful, and I didn't want to reject her offer outright. She was trying, after all. Trying to be a good granddaughter, trying to contribute to the household even though she wasn't paying rent. "That's sweet of you to offer, honey," I said. "But I've got it under control. Been doing it this way for 10 years now." Ashley nodded, but she kept watching as I finished filling the organizer. She asked questions about each medication, what it was for, how much I took when I took it. I answered patiently, figuring she was just curious, maybe thinking about her own future health as she got older. Looking back now, I realized she was gathering information, learning my routine, figuring out how to exploit the one area of my life where I was vulnerable. But I didn't see it then. How could I? She was my granddaughter, Caroline's daughter, family. About a week after that conversation, Ashley came to me with a proposal. She'd been doing some research, she said, and she'd found out that there were grocery delivery services that would bring everything right to your door. Wouldn't that be easier than me going out to Piggly Wiggly every week? "I go to Piggly Wiggly because I like going," I told her. "I see people I know. I chat with Betty at the checkout. It's part of my routine." "But what about when the weather's bad?" Ashley persisted. "Or when you're not feeling well? Wouldn't it be nice to have the option of just staying home and having groceries delivered? She was being thoughtful, considerate. And it was true that sometimes the weather was bad, or I was tired, or I just didn't feel like making the trip into town. Having groceries delivered would be convenient on those days. All right, I said. Let's try it once and see how it goes. Ashley was thrilled. She helped me set up an account on the grocery delivery app, showed me how to select items on my phone, though I insisted on doing it myself. I wasn't so old that I needed someone else shopping for me. But Ashley was right there, looking over my shoulder, making suggestions, adding things to my cart that I didn't necessarily need. The groceries arrived 2 days later. Everything looked fine. All the items I'd ordered plus a few extras that Ashley said she'd added because they were on sale. We unpacked everything together, putting items away in the pantry and refrigerator. That night, I made chicken and dumplings for dinner, one of Harold's favorite meals that I still made regularly even though he was gone. Ashley came down and ate with me, which was nice. We didn't do that often, share meals. Usually she'd grab something and take it back to her room. "This is really good, Grandma," Ashley said, and she seemed to mean it. "I should learn to cook like this." "I'll teach you," I offered. "It's not hard once you get the hang of it." We had a pleasant evening. Watched some television together, an old movie on Turner Classic Movies that I loved. Ashley stayed through the whole thing, even though I could tell she was bored. She was trying, making an effort to connect with me, and I appreciated it. Maybe this arrangement was going to work out after all. That night, I went to bed feeling good about having Ashley in the house. Maybe Caroline had been right. Maybe it was nice to have company. Maybe I had been lonely without realizing it. I woke up the next morning feeling strange. Not sick exactly, just off. Dizzy when I stood up. A little nauseous. Tired in a way that didn't make sense since I'd slept a full 8 hours. I figured maybe I was coming down with something. There was a stomach bug going around town. Betty at Piggly Wiggly had mentioned it last time I was there. Half the church choir had been out sick the previous Sunday. I took it easy that day, skipped my morning walk, made some tea and toast for breakfast, sat in my recliner and read for a while. By afternoon, I felt a little better, good enough to do some light gardening. But the next morning, I felt bad again. Same dizziness, same nausea, same exhaustion. And this time, there was a headache too. A dull throbbing at the base of my skull that wouldn't go away no matter how much water I drank or how many Tylenol I took. Ashley came downstairs around 10:30 and found me on the couch with a cold compress on my forehead. "Grandma, are you okay?" She looked genuinely concerned. "Just not feeling great," I told her. "Probably caught that bug that's going around." "Have you taken your morning pills?" I had. I always took my pills first thing after breakfast, like clockwork. Been doing it for years. "Maybe you should call Dr. Chen," Ashley suggested. "Just to be safe. It's just a stomach bug, honey. It'll pass." But it didn't pass. Over the next week, I felt progressively worse. The dizziness got more intense. The nausea became constant. I couldn't eat much without feeling sick. I lost my appetite completely, which was unusual for me. I've always had a healthy appetite, always enjoyed food. The exhaustion was the worst part. I've never been a person who needed naps, but suddenly I was sleeping 12, 14 hours a day and still waking up tired. My morning walks became impossible. Even getting dressed felt like a monumental effort. Ashley was wonderful during this time. She brought me meals on a tray, even though I could barely eat them. She made sure I was taking my medications. She called Caroline to update her on how I was doing, and Caroline called me directly, worry evident in her voice. "Mama, you need to see Dr. Chen," Caroline insisted. "I will if it doesn't get better soon," I promised. But part of me didn't want to go to the doctor. I was embarrassed, honestly. Just a few weeks ago, I'd been telling everyone how healthy I was, how I was in better shape than most people half my age. Now I could barely get out of bed. It felt like admitting defeat, like admitting I was old and failing. Ashley finally made the appointment for me herself, telling me Dr. Chen had a cancellation and could see me that afternoon. I was too tired to argue. Ashley drove me to the medical center, helped me into the waiting room, stayed right by my side the whole time. Dr. Chen was concerned when she saw me. "Margaret, what's going on? You don't look like yourself." I explained the symptoms. The dizziness, the nausea, the exhaustion, the headaches. Dr. Chen asked about my diet, my sleep, any changes in my routine or medications. I told her nothing had changed, everything was the same as always. She ran blood tests, checked my blood pressure, which was higher than normal, checked my heart rate, which was irregular. She looked worried, and that worried me. "I'm going to run a comprehensive panel," Dr. Chen said. "Check your kidney function, your liver, your electrolytes, everything. Sometimes as we age, our bodies process medications differently. It's possible one of your medications isn't agreeing with you anymore." The blood work results came back 3 days later. Dr. Chen called me personally, which she didn't usually do. "My kidney function was concerning," she said. "Not failing, but not good either. My liver enzymes were elevated. My electrolyte balance was off. Margaret, I'm taking you off the blood pressure medication temporarily," Dr. Chen said. "I think it might be causing some of these symptoms. Sometimes the kidneys can't process medications as efficiently as they used to, and it can build up in your system." "Okay," I said, relieved to have an answer, a solution. "But I want you to come back in 2 weeks for another blood test. We need to monitor this closely." Ashley picked up my new prescription at the pharmacy, the adjusted blood pressure medication at a lower dose. She was so attentive, so caring. She set reminders on her phone to make sure I took my pills at the right times. She prepared meals that were easy on my stomach. She called Dr. Chen's office to schedule the follow-up appointment. Caroline came to visit that weekend. She sat with me in the living room while Ashley made us tea in the kitchen. "Mama, I'm so worried about you," Caroline said, holding my hand. "You look so thin. Have you lost weight?" I had. 10 pounds in 2 weeks, according to my scale. Not intentionally, just because I had no appetite and eating made me feel sick. "Dr. Chen thinks it's a medication issue," I told Caroline. She adjusted my prescription. I should start feeling better soon. But I didn't feel better. If anything, I felt worse. The dizziness intensified to the point where I was afraid to stand up without holding onto furniture. The nausea was so bad I could barely keep down water, let alone food. And the exhaustion was overwhelming, a deep bone tiredness that made even thinking feel difficult. I started having trouble with my memory. Small things at first. I'd forget where I put my reading glasses, even though they were right on the table next to me. I'd start to tell Ashley something and then forget what I was going to say mid-sentence. I'd look at the calendar and not remember what day it was. That scared me more than the physical symptoms. My mind had always been sharp. I did crossword puzzles every day, read voraciously, kept up with current events. Suddenly, I couldn't concentrate enough to read a paragraph without forgetting what I'd just read. Ashley was so patient with me. She'd gently remind me of things I'd forgotten. She'd help me find my glasses or my phone or whatever I was looking for. She never made me feel bad about it, never acted frustrated or annoyed. I should have been grateful. And I was, in a way. But there was also a growing sense of fear. What was happening to me? Was this how it started, the decline into dementia? Was I losing my mind? The 2-week follow-up appointment with Dr. Chen was alarming. My kidney function had gotten worse, not better. My liver enzymes were even more elevated. Dr. Chen looked genuinely worried. "Margaret, I'm admitting you to the hospital for observation," she said. "Something's going on that we're not catching with outpatient tests. I want you where we can monitor you closely, run more comprehensive diagnostics." I was admitted to Beaumont General Hospital that same afternoon. They put me in a private room on the 3rd floor, hooked me up to monitors, started running tests. Lots of tests. Blood draws every few hours, urine samples, imaging scans, neurological assessments. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Everything pointed to some kind of systemic failure, but they couldn't identify the cause. It wasn't my heart. It wasn't cancer. It wasn't an infection. It was like my body was just shutting down for no apparent reason. One of the doctors, a young woman named Dr. Sarah Patel, sat down with me after 3 days of testing. "Mrs. Holloway, we're running out of standard explanations. Have you been exposed to any environmental toxins? New cleaning products, pesticides, anything like that?" "No, nothing new. Everything in my house has been the same for years. Any chance you could have ingested something accidentally? Old medications, spoiled food? I don't think so. Ashley does most of the shopping and cooking now since I've been sick. Dr. Patel made a note. Ashley is your granddaughter who's living with you. Yes. Has she been sick at all? Same symptoms as you? No, she's been fine. Healthy as can be. Dr. Patel looked thoughtful. That's interesting. If it was something environmental in the house, you'd both be affected. Let me ask you something. When did your symptoms start? Can you pinpoint it to a specific date or event? I thought back. It had been gradual, but the first morning I'd felt bad was the day after the grocery delivery. The day after I'd had that nice dinner with Ashley, the chicken and dumplings. About 3 weeks ago, I said. Right after we started using the grocery delivery service. And before that, you were feeling fine? No symptoms at all? No, I was perfectly healthy. Dr. Patel made more notes. I'm going to recommend a toxicology screen. It's a long shot, but given that we can't find any other explanation, it's worth checking. A toxicology screen. That meant they were looking for poisons, for drugs, for things that shouldn't be in my system. The thought was absurd. Who would poison me? And how? I lived in a quiet house in a small town with my granddaughter. There was no one who would want to hurt me, but Dr. Patel was right. They'd ruled out everything else. A toxicology screen was the next logical step. The results came back 2 days later, and everything changed. Dr. Patel came into my room with another doctor, an older man she introduced as Dr. Marcus Webb, the hospital's chief toxicologist. They both looked serious, the kind of serious that makes your heart rate spike even before they say anything. Mrs. Holloway, Dr. Patel said, sitting down in the chair next to my bed. We got your toxicology results back. There are elevated levels of several substances in your system that shouldn't be there. What kind of substances? Dr. Webb pulled out a chart. You have high levels of digoxin in your blood. That's a heart medication. Are you taking digoxin? No, I said. My blood pressure medication, cholesterol medication, vitamins, that's it. No heart medication. The doctors exchanged glances. You also have elevated levels of what appears to be an antifreeze compound, ethylene glycol. And there are traces of several benzodiazepines, which are sedatives. I don't take any of those things, I said, my voice rising. How would I have those in my system? That's what we need to figure out, Dr. Patel said gently. Mrs. Holloway, the levels we're seeing, they're not accidental. Someone has been giving you these substances deliberately and over a sustained period of time. The room started spinning. Not from the medications or the poisoning, but from the implication of what they were saying. Someone was poisoning me, deliberately, intentionally. Someone was trying to kill me. Who? I whispered. Who would do this? That's something we need to investigate, Dr. Webb said. But Mrs. Holloway, this is very serious. This isn't just a medical issue anymore. This is a criminal matter. We're required by law to report this to the police. The police. This was turning into something out of a crime show, something that happened to other people, not to 76-year-old grandmothers in small Louisiana towns. A nurse came in and gave me something to help me calm down. I was shaking, crying, unable to process what I'd just been told. Someone was poisoning me. Someone wanted me dead. But who? Who would want to kill an old woman who spent her days gardening and volunteering at church? And then, like a cold hand gripping my heart, I thought about Ashley. No, that was impossible. She was my granddaughter, Caroline's daughter. She'd been so sweet, so helpful, so caring during my illness. But she was the only one who had access to my food, my medications, my daily routine. She'd been the one suggesting grocery delivery. She'd been the one wanting to help with my pill organizer. She'd been the one preparing my meals. She was the only person who could have done this. The thought was so horrifying, so impossible to accept that I pushed it away. It couldn't be Ashley. There had to be another explanation. Detective Linda Morrison arrived at the hospital an hour later. She was a woman in her early 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a ponytail and sharp, assessing eyes. She pulled up a chair close to my bed and opened a notebook. Mrs. Holloway, I'm going to ask you some detailed questions about your living situation, your routines, and the people who have access to your home. I know this is difficult, but I need you to be as specific and honest as possible. For the next 2 hours, I answered her questions. I told her about Ashley moving in, about the grocery deliveries, about how sick I'd gotten, about how Ashley had been so helpful, so attentive. Detective Morrison took extensive notes. She asked about my finances, which seemed like an odd question. I told her I was comfortable, not wealthy but secure. I had the house, which was paid off. I had Harold's life insurance money, about $300,000 invested. Conservatively, I had my Social Security and Harold's pension. I lived modestly and saved carefully. Do you have a will, Mrs. Holloway? Yes. Harold and I set one up years ago. When he died, I updated it. Who are your beneficiaries? My 3 children split everything equally. The house, the savings, the investments, all divided 3 ways. So Caroline, Ashley's mother, would inherit 1/3 of your estate. Yes. And how much would that be, approximately? I did some mental math. The house was worth maybe $200,000. The savings and investments another $300,000. Some other assets, bits and pieces. Maybe $800,000 total. So Caroline would get about $265,000, give or take. Detective Morrison wrote something in her notebook, underlined it. Mrs. Holloway, has Ashley ever discussed your finances with you? Asked about your will or your assets? I thought back. No, not really. The only time money came up was when Caroline first called about Ashley moving in, mentioned that Ashley was struggling financially. Has Ashley asked to borrow money from you? No. Has she had access to your financial information? Bank statements, investment accounts? I keep all that paperwork in my desk in the study. It's not locked or anything. Anyone in the house could access it if they wanted to. Detective Morrison made more notes. Mrs. Holloway, I need to be direct with you. The toxicology results show deliberate, sustained poisoning over several weeks. The substances in your system are consistent with someone trying to make you appear to be having organ failure, possibly inducing a heart attack or kidney failure that would look like natural causes in an elderly person. This is attempted murder, and it's sophisticated enough that whoever's doing it has done research. My granddaughter wouldn't do that, I said, but my voice cracked. She wouldn't. Detective Morrison's expression was sympathetic but firm. Mrs. Holloway, in cases like this, it's almost always someone close to the victim, someone with opportunity and motive. Ashley has been living in your home. She's had access to your food and medications. And if her mother stands to inherit a significant sum when you die, that's motive. But she'd have to wait for Caroline to die to get that money, I protested. The inheritance goes to my children, not my grandchildren, unless Caroline shares it with her, or unless Ashley believes her mother would give her a significant portion. Mrs. Holloway, how is Caroline's financial situation? I didn't want to answer that. It felt like betrayal. But Detective Morrison was waiting, and this was serious. Not great, I admitted. Caroline and her husband Mark have always struggled with money. Bad investments, credit card debt. Mark lost his job about 2 years ago, hasn't found steady work since. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and they know they're in your will. Of course, all my children do. So Ashley knows that if something happens to you, her mother suddenly has over $250,000. Money that could solve all their financial problems. Money that Caroline would very likely share with her daughter, who's currently unemployed and living rent-free with her grandmother. It all made horrible, logical sense, but I still couldn't accept it. There has to be another explanation, I said desperately. Maybe it's an accident. Maybe something in the house, in the water or the pipes or something. Detective Morrison shook her head. Mrs. Holloway, the substances in your system don't occur naturally. They have to be deliberately introduced. I'm sorry, but we need to treat this as an active investigation into attempted murder. She stood up. For your safety, you're going to remain in the hospital. We're going to have an officer stationed outside your door. No visitors except your immediate family, and even they will be supervised. We're going to search your home with your permission, looking for the source of these toxins. And we're going to need to interview Ashley. My heart sank. This was really happening. My own granddaughter was going to be questioned by police about trying to kill me. But even as I thought it, even as the evidence lined up, part of me still couldn't believe it. This was Ashley, Caroline's daughter. The little girl I'd watched grow up. She might be distant, she might not be warm and cuddly, but she couldn't be a murderer. Could she? Detective Morrison left, and I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what was happening. A police officer took up position outside my door. A nurse came in to check my vitals. Dr. Patel stopped by to tell me they were starting chelation therapy to remove the toxins from my system. Everything felt surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. This couldn't be happening to me. Things like this didn't happen in Beaumont, Louisiana. They didn't happen to retired Sunday school teachers who grew tomatoes and made chicken and dumplings. But they were happening. The evidence was in my bloodstream. The poison was real. The danger was real. And somewhere in my house, my granddaughter was probably realizing that her plan had been discovered. That evening, Caroline called. The hospital staff had notified her about what was happening, and she was hysterical. "Mama, they're saying Ashley tried to kill you. That can't be true. That's insane. There must be some mistake." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to agree with her, to dismiss the whole thing as a misunderstanding. But the toxicology report didn't lie. "Caroline," I said carefully, "the doctors found poison in my blood. Lots of it. Someone's been giving it to me for weeks, but it couldn't be Ashley. Mama, she's been taking care of you. She's been so worried about you. She calls me every day with updates. Who else could it be? I'm living alone with her. She's the only one with access to my food, my pills, everything." Caroline was crying now, that ugly crying where you can barely breathe. "No, no, this is wrong. They're wrong. Ashley wouldn't do this. I know my daughter. But did she? Did any of us really know Ashley?" I realized I'd never spent enough time with her to know who she really was. She'd always been polite but distant, present but not engaged. I knew what she looked like, knew basic facts about her life, but I didn't know her heart. I didn't know what she was capable of. "Mama, I'm coming to the hospital," Caroline said. "I need to see you. I need to understand what's happening." "Okay, honey. Come tomorrow morning. They're not letting anyone visit tonight." After I hung up, I thought about my other children. Thomas and Barbara, living 40 minutes away in Baton Rouge. My youngest, Michael, who'd moved to Texas 10 years ago. Should I call them? Should I tell them what was happening? The hospital staff decided for me. They contacted all my emergency contacts, which included all 3 of my children. By 9 o'clock that evening, my phone was ringing off the hook. Thomas, shocked and angry. Michael, disbelieving and demanding answers. I told them what I knew, which wasn't much. I'd been poisoned. The police were investigating. Ashley was the prime suspect. Both of my sons wanted to come to the hospital immediately. I told them to wait until morning, that I was safe, that there was nothing they could do tonight anyway. But I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ashley's face. Sweet, helpful Ashley bringing me tea. Ashley offering to manage my medications. Ashley so concerned about my health. Had it all been an act? Had she been planning my death from the moment she moved in? Or had the idea come to her gradually as she realized how vulnerable I was, how easy it would be? The next morning, Detective Morrison returned with news. They'd searched my house overnight with a warrant. They'd found several things. In Ashley's bedroom, hidden in the back of her closet, they'd found a locked box. Inside the box were bottles of pills that didn't belong to me, medications that matched some of the substances in my toxicology report. There was also a bottle of automotive antifreeze, half empty. In the kitchen, they'd found my weekly pill organizer. When they tested the pills in the organizer against my actual prescriptions, they didn't match. Someone had replaced my real medications with look-alike pills that contained the poisonous substances. And in the trash, wrapped in a plastic bag and buried under other garbage, they'd found receipts. Online purchases of various medications and chemicals, all shipped to the house, all charged to a credit card in Ashley's name. Mrs. Holloway, Detective Morrison said, "We have enough evidence to arrest Ashley for attempted murder. We've issued a warrant. Do you know where she might be? At the house, I assume. Unless she ran when she realized what was happening. But Ashley hadn't run. She was at my house when the police arrived to arrest her that morning. According to Detective Morrison, Ashley seemed surprised, even confused. She insisted she hadn't done anything wrong, that there must be some mistake. She's claiming ignorance, Detective Morrison told me. Says she doesn't know how those items ended up in her room, doesn't know how your pills got switched. She's suggesting maybe someone else is setting her up. Who else could have done it? There's nobody else in the house. That's what I told her. She didn't have a good answer. Ashley was taken to the parish jail. Her bail hearing was set for 2 days later. Caroline was beside herself, alternating between defending Ashley and trying to understand how this could have happened. Mama, Caroline sat by my hospital bed, holding my hand. I don't understand. Why would Ashley do this? If she needed money, she could have asked me. She could have asked you. We're family. But that was just it. Ashley hadn't wanted to ask. She'd wanted to take. And not just any amount, but everything. My entire estate. $265,000 that would go to Caroline, money that Ashley must have believed she could convince her mother to share. Or maybe a darker thought occurred to me. Maybe Ashley was planning to kill Caroline too eventually. Get rid of the middleman, so to speak. If I died and Caroline died, the inheritance would go to Caroline's children, divided between Ashley and her younger brother, Kyle. Was Ashley really that cold, that calculating? Had I been living with a sociopath for the past month and a half? The thought made me feel sick all over again, and not from the poison. Thomas arrived at the hospital around noon, his face set in angry lines. He'd always been my most protective child, the one who'd take on the world for his family. When he was a boy, he'd gotten into fights at school defending his sisters. Now he looked like he wanted to fight someone over what had happened to me. "Mama, who do you need me to call? What do you need me to do?" Thomas asked, pacing the hospital room like a caged animal. "I don't know, honey. The police are handling it. The doctors are treating me. I just need to get better. You're pressing charges, right? Full charges?" Thomas's voice was hard. "She tried to kill you, Mama. She needs to go to prison for a long time." I hadn't thought that far ahead. Pressing charges felt so formal, so final. It meant admitting that this was really happening, that Ashley had really tried to kill me. But of course I was pressing charges. What other choice did I have? "Yes," I told Thomas. "I'm pressing charges. Good, because if you didn't, I would." He stopped pacing and looked at me. "Mama, did you have any idea? Any sign at all that something was wrong?" I thought back through the weeks Ashley had lived with me, looking for red flags, for warning signs, for anything that should have tipped me off. There were small things, I realized. The way Ashley had been so eager to help with my medications. The way she'd pushed the grocery delivery service. The way she'd always been in the kitchen when I wasn't, opportunities to tamper with my food without me seeing. And there were financial clues too, things I hadn't paid attention to at the time. Ashley drove a nice car, newer model, probably cost $30,000. She wore expensive clothes, carried a designer handbag. For someone who'd supposedly lost her job and was struggling to pay rent, she didn't seem to be cutting back on luxuries. But I dismissed all of it as not my business, as maybe she had credit cards or savings she was living off. I'd given her the benefit of the doubt because that's what you do with family. I should have been more suspicious, I told Thomas. I should have seen the signs. "Don't you dare blame yourself," Thomas said fiercely. "She's the one who did this. She's the one who betrayed your trust. This is not your fault, Mama, but it felt like my fault, at least partially. I'd let her into my home. I'd given her access to my life. I'd trusted her when maybe I should have been more cautious." The bail hearing was held 2 days later. I wasn't well enough to attend, still recovering in the hospital as the chelation therapy slowly removed the toxins from my system. But Detective Morrison called me afterward with the results. The judge set bail at $500,000, Detective Morrison said. Given the severity of the charges and the evidence against her, he considered her a flight risk. Ashley's family couldn't come up with that kind of money, so she's remaining in custody until trial. That trial would be months away, Detective Morrison explained. The legal process moved slowly. There would be more investigations, more evidence gathering, depositions, pre-trial motions. I needed to be prepared for this to take a long time. I also needed to be prepared for Ashley to mount a defense. Her court-appointed attorney would try every angle to create reasonable doubt. They might claim the evidence was planted. They might suggest I'd accidentally poisoned myself. They might try to paint me as a confused, elderly woman who didn't understand what had really happened. Your toxicology results are solid evidence, Detective Morrison assured me. Combined with what we found in the house, we have a strong case. But you need to understand, Mrs. Holloway, trials can be unpredictable. Juries can be swayed. We'll do everything we can, but I can't guarantee the outcome. I spent another week in the hospital. My kidney function slowly improved as the toxins cleared. My liver enzymes came down. The dizziness and nausea faded. I started being able to eat again, to think clearly, to feel like myself. But even as my body healed, my mind struggled. I kept replaying the past weeks, looking for answers. Why had Ashley done this? Was it really just about money? Or was there something deeper, some resentment or anger I'd never known about? Caroline visited every day, and every visit was painful. She was torn between her mother and her daughter, unable to reconcile the sweet girl she'd raised with the person who'd allegedly tried to commit murder. "Mama," Caroline said one afternoon, her eyes red from crying, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is there any chance, any possibility at all, that this is a misunderstanding? That maybe Ashley made a mistake but didn't mean to hurt you? Caroline, they found poison hidden in her room. They found receipts for the things she bought to poison me. They found my pills had been switched out. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. But why?" Caroline's voice broke. "Why would she do this? I don't understand." "The money," I said gently. "She must have believed that if I died, you'd get the inheritance and share it with her. She and you both needed money desperately." "But I would never," Caroline protested. "I would never encourage her to kill for money. Never, I know that. But maybe Ashley thought you would. Or maybe she planned to do it without you knowing, and then act surprised and sympathetic when I died. That's monsters do that, not my daughter." But the evidence suggested otherwise. And as the investigation continued, more disturbing details emerged. Detective Morrison found Ashley's search history on her laptop, which the police had seized during the house search. Ashley had been researching how to poison elderly people for months, long before she moved in with me. She'd looked up symptoms of organ failure, how to induce heart attacks, what substances were hard to detect in routine medical tests. She'd also been researching my financial situation. Detective Morrison found evidence that Ashley had accessed my bank accounts online, using my computer when I wasn't home. She'd looked at my investment statements, my will, everything. It was premeditated, planned, calculated. This wasn't a desperate act by someone who'd suddenly found themselves in financial trouble. This was a long-term scheme, and there was more. Detective Morrison discovered that Ashley had been fired from her job in New Orleans not because the company was downsizing, but because she'd been caught stealing. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. The company had given her the option of being fired quietly or facing charges. She'd chosen to be fired. She also had significant credit card debt, over $60,000. She'd been living well beyond her means for years, racking up charges she couldn't pay off. So when Caroline called asking if Ashley could move in with me, it wasn't just about helping a family member. It was about escaping her problems in New Orleans and finding a new opportunity. An opportunity to kill her grandmother for inheritance money. The revelation of Ashley's theft from her employer made Caroline finally accept the truth. Her daughter wasn't who she'd thought she was. Ashley had problems, serious problems that went beyond just making mistakes. "I failed her somehow," Caroline said, sobbing in my hospital room. "I must have failed her as a mother for her to turn out like this. This isn't your fault," I told her, the same thing Thomas had told me. People make their own choices. Ashley made hers. But it broke my heart to see Caroline blame herself. She was a good mother. She'd raised Ashley with love and attention, given her every advantage. Sometimes people just go wrong, no matter how good their upbringing. I was finally released from the hospital after 10 days. Thomas insisted I come stay with him and Barbara in Baton Rouge, at least until I felt stronger and the house could be thoroughly cleaned. I agreed, partly because I genuinely needed the help, and partly because I couldn't face going back to that house yet. The house where Ashley had slowly poisoned me. The house where I'd been so close to death without even realizing it. The house that no longer felt like home. Thomas and Barbara were wonderful. They set me up in their guest room. which had its own bathroom so I wouldn't have to navigate stairs. Barbara cooked all my favorite foods, things she knew I could keep down. Thomas drove me to all my follow-up appointments with Dr. Chen. Slowly, over weeks, I regained my strength. My weight came back up. The color returned to my face. The mental fog lifted completely. I started feeling like myself again. But emotionally, I was a mess. I had nightmares about Ashley. I'd wake up terrified, convinced she was in the room, about to give me more poison. I started having panic attacks when anyone handed me food or medication, afraid it might be contaminated. Barbara convinced me to see a therapist, Dr. Rebecca Lynch, who specialized in trauma. I was resistant at first. I'm 76 years old. I've been through plenty in my life without needing a therapist. But Barbara was insistent, and I finally agreed. Dr. Lynch was young, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a gentle manner. She explained that what I'd experienced was a profound betrayal, and that betrayal trauma was recognized as a real psychological condition. Mrs. Holloway, Dr. Lynch said during our second session, what Ashley did to you wasn't just attempted murder. It was a violation of the most fundamental trust. She was family. She was supposed to protect you, and instead she tried to kill you. That kind of betrayal affects you on a deep level. It's normal to have trust issues, to feel paranoid, to have nightmares. You're not crazy. You're traumatized. Hearing that helped somehow. Knowing that my reactions were normal, expected even. That I wasn't losing my mind. I was healing from something terrible. We worked on strategies for managing my anxiety. Breathing exercises, mindfulness techniques. Gradually exposing myself to triggers in controlled ways. It was slow work, but it helped. 3 months after my release from the hospital, the preliminary hearing was held. This was where the prosecution would present enough evidence to prove there was probable cause for the charges. If the judge agreed, the case would proceed to trial. I attended the hearing, sitting in the courtroom with Thomas on one side and Michael, who'd flown in from Texas, on the other. Caroline wasn't there. She couldn't bear to see Ashley in handcuffs, facing criminal charges. Ashley was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed. She looked thinner than I remembered, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, something flickered across her face. Fear? Guilt? I couldn't tell. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney James Chen, no relation to Dr. Chen, laid out their case methodically. The toxicology evidence. The poison found in Ashley's room. The switched medications. The online purchase receipts. The search history on her computer. It was damning. Overwhelming. Every piece of evidence pointed to Ashley deliberately and systematically poisoning me over several weeks. Ashley's defense attorney, a public defender named Robert Hayes, tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial, that the poison could have been planted, that the search history could have been from researching a medical condition, not planning a murder. But it was weak, and everyone in that courtroom knew it. Judge Patricia Mellencamp, a stern woman in her 60s who'd been on the bench for 20 years, heard all the arguments and reviewed the evidence. Then she made her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, Judge Mellencamp said, I find probable cause to bind this case over for trial. The defendant will remain in custody without bail until trial, given the severity of the charges and the risk to the victim. Ashley started crying when she heard that. Not quiet tears, but loud, gasping sobs. The bailiff had to help her out of the courtroom because she couldn't walk on her own. Part of me felt vindicated. Justice was being served. The person who tried to kill me was being held accountable. But part of me just felt sad. That was my granddaughter, my family, being led away to jail. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. Thomas had no such mixed feelings. Good, she belongs in jail. She deserves whatever she gets. Michael nodded in agreement. Mama, you were too nice to her. You're still too nice. She tried to murder you. Stop feeling bad for her. But I couldn't help it. Even knowing what Ashley had done, even understanding that she'd planned my death, I couldn't completely shut off the part of me that remembered her as a child. Caroline's daughter, my granddaughter. The trial was set for 6 months later. In the meantime, I had to figure out how to rebuild my life. I couldn't go back to my house in Beaumont. Not yet, maybe not ever. The memories were too painful. Every room reminded me of being sick, of being poisoned, of the weeks I'd spent dying without knowing why. Thomas and Barbara offered to let me stay with them permanently, but I didn't want to be a burden. I was feeling better now, almost back to my old self physically. I needed my independence back, so I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I put my house on the market and bought a small condo in a senior living community near Thomas and Barbara. It was a nice place, safe and secure, with activities and community spaces. Other seniors my age, people who'd also lived full lives and were now looking for comfort and companionship. Caroline was devastated when I told her I was selling the house. "Mama, that's our family home. That's where we grew up. You can't just sell it. I can't live there anymore, Caroline. Every time I think about that house, I think about Ashley poisoning me. I think about how close I came to dying. I need a fresh start. But what about all the memories? What about Dad? Harold's memory goes with me wherever I am. The house is just a building. And honestly, Caroline, I need to let it go. For my own sanity." The house sold quickly to a young couple with 3 kids who were excited about all the space. I sold most of the furniture with it, keeping only the pieces that had real sentimental value. Harold's desk, my grandmother's china cabinet, the rocking chair where I'd rocked all 3 of my babies. Everything else I let go. It was surprisingly liberating, shedding 50 years of accumulated possessions, starting fresh with only what truly mattered. I moved into my new condo in August, 5 months after Ashley's arrest. It was small, just 1 bedroom, but it was perfect for me. Ground floor, so no stairs. A little patio where I could garden in pots. A kitchen big enough to cook but small enough that I didn't have to clean much. And most importantly, no memories of Ashley poisoning me. My new neighbors were friendly. Martha Henderson, yes, same name as my old friend Martha, who I'd known since childhood, was a widow like me, 78 years old, sharp as a tack. We bonded immediately over our shared love of crossword puzzles and murder mysteries. The irony of bonding over murder mysteries while waiting for my granddaughter's murder trial wasn't lost on me. George and Linda Park lived next door, a retired couple who'd moved from Houston to be closer to their grandchildren. They invited me over for dinner my first week there, and we became fast friends. Life in the condo community was pleasant. There were activities if I wanted them, bridge games and book clubs and exercise classes. But there was also privacy if I needed it. I could be as social or as solitary as I wanted. I started volunteering again, this time at the local library instead of the church. I wasn't ready to go back to my old church in Beaumont, where everyone would know what had happened and look at me with pity. The library felt like neutral territory, a place where I could be useful without having to talk about my situation if I didn't want to. Dr. Lynch and I continued our weekly sessions. We worked through my trust issues, my anxiety, my nightmares. Slowly, I started to feel more like myself again. Not the same as before, I'd never be exactly the same, but a new version of myself. Stronger in some ways, more cautious in others. One thing I struggled with was talking to Caroline. She called me every few days, and every conversation was painful. She was torn between supporting her mother, me, and mourning the loss of her daughter, Ashley, who was sitting in jail awaiting trial. "Mama," Caroline said during one particularly difficult call, "I know what Ashley did was terrible. I know she tried to kill you, but she's still my daughter. I can't just shut off my love for her. I'm not asking you to," I told her. "But Caroline, you need to understand that our relationship is going to be different now. I can't pretend this didn't happen. I can't act like everything is fine. I know, I just wish," she paused. "I wish there was a way to fix this. To make it all go away. There isn't. What's done is done. Now we all have to live with it." After I hung up, I cried. For Caroline, who'd lost her daughter even though Ashley was still alive. For myself, who'd lost my sense of safety and trust. For the family we used to be, before money and greed destroyed everything. The trial finally started in October, 7 months after my hospitalization. It was held at the Beaumont Parish Courthouse, a stately old building that had been there since before I was born. I'd walked past it thousands of times in my life, never imagining I'd one day testify inside as the victim of attempted murder. The prosecution's case was comprehensive. Ada James Chen was methodical, presenting evidence in a logical order that built an undeniable narrative. He started with my medical testimony, having me explain my symptoms, how sick I'd gotten, how I'd nearly died. "Mrs. Holloway," Chen asked me gently, "before Ashley moved in with you, how was your health?" "Excellent. I was walking 3 miles a day, volunteering regularly, managing my own household. Dr. Chen said I was in better shape than most people half my age. And after Ashley moved in, I got progressively sicker. Dizzy, nauseous, exhausted. I lost weight. I couldn't think clearly. I thought I was dying." "Because you were dying, weren't you?" "Yes. The doctors said if the poisoning had continued another few weeks, my organs would have failed completely. I would have died." The courtroom was silent. Ashley, sitting at the defense table, wouldn't look at me. Chen then called Dr. Chen to the stand. She testified about my medical condition when I was admitted to the hospital, the mysterious symptoms that didn't match any standard diagnosis, the toxicology results that revealed the poisoning. Dr. Patel testified next, explaining the types of poisons found in my system and how they would have affected my organs. It was chilling to hear it described in medical terms, the systematic attack on my body that Ashley had orchestrated. Detective Morrison's testimony was the most damning. She presented the evidence found in my house: the poison hidden in Ashley's closet, the switched medications, the online purchase receipts, the computer search history. The defense attorney, Robert Hayes, tried to cross-examine, tried to suggest the evidence could have been planted or misinterpreted. But it was a weak defense, and Detective Morrison shut down every attempt. "Mr. Hayes," Detective Morrison said firmly, "we found bottles of digoxin, benzodiazepines, and ethylene glycol hidden in a locked box in the defendant's closet. Those exact substances were found in Mrs. Holloway's bloodstream. We found receipts for online purchases of those items, charged to the defendant's credit card, shipped to the house. We found the defendant's computer search history showing months of research into how to poison elderly people. The evidence isn't circumstantial. It's direct and overwhelming." Then Chen called a surprise witness, someone I hadn't known about: Emily Bradford, Ashley's former roommate in New Orleans. Emily testified that Ashley had talked about her grandmother's money, about how much she'd inherit when I died, about how it would solve all her financial problems. She said her grandmother was old, Emily testified, that she probably didn't have much time left anyway, that it would be a blessing for everyone when she finally passed. Ashley said she continued Deck 20 orchestrated expansive narrative continuation with grandmother's voice. "The user wants me to continue this story. I need to keep writing at the same detailed, comprehensive level, expanding to reach the 80,000 minus 100,000 plus word range like the original examples. I should continue with the trial testimony, the verdict, the aftermath, and a lengthy recovery/legacy section. The story needs to maintain the voice of an elderly American grandmother narrating her experience. I'll continue from where I left off with Emily Bradford's testimony and expand significantly on the complete trial proceedings, Ashley's defense attempts jury deliberation, sentencing Caroline's reaction, recovery process rebuilding trust, creating a foundation or advocacy work, years passing final reflections on family, betrayal, and survival. This needs to be much, much longer to match the original script lengths. To be better off without her around draining resources. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Melanchon banged her gavel. Ashley was crying again, shaking her head like she was denying the testimony. Hayes tried to discredit Emily on cross-examination. "Isn't it true that you and Ashley had a falling out? That you were angry with her when she moved out?" "Yes, we had disagreements," Emily admitted. "But that doesn't change what she told me. Multiple times, over several months, she talked about her grandmother dying and what that would mean financially for her family." The prosecution rested their case after 3 days of testimony. The evidence was overwhelming, stacked high like bricks building a wall around Ashley that she couldn't escape. Hayes's defense strategy was to paint Ashley as troubled but not murderous. He called a psychiatrist who testified that Ashley suffered from depression and anxiety, that she'd been under tremendous stress from losing her job, and her financial problems. But depression doesn't make you research how to poison someone for months, Chen pointed out on cross-examination. Anxiety doesn't make you hide bottles of digoxin in your closet. Stress doesn't make you systematically replace your grandmother's medications with poison. Hayes tried to suggest I'd been confused about my medications, that maybe I'd accidentally taken the wrong pills. But that theory fell apart when confronted with the evidence of deliberate tampering. He tried to suggest someone else had access to the house and could have done the poisoning. But Detective Morrison testified that the house had no signs of forced entry, no evidence of anyone else being there, and Ashley had been the only other person living in the home during the relevant time period. Finally, Hayes put Ashley on the stand. It was a risky move, but he probably felt he had no choice. The evidence against her was so strong that their only hope was for Ashley to somehow convince the jury of her innocence. Ashley took the stand wearing a conservative dress that Caroline had brought to the jail for her. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She looked young, vulnerable, nothing like the calculating killer the prosecution had described. Hayes led her through her testimony carefully. Ashley talked about losing her job, about her financial struggles, about how grateful she'd been when I offered to let her move in. She described taking care of me when I got sick, calling doctors, staying by my side. I loved my grandmother, Ashley said, her voice breaking. I would never hurt her. I don't know how those things ended up in my room. I don't know who switched her medications. But it wasn't me. I swear it wasn't me. She was convincing, I had to admit. If I hadn't known the truth, if I hadn't been the one she'd poisoned, I might have believed her. But then Chen stood up for cross-examination, and everything changed. Miss Lambert, Chen said, his voice calm but firm. You testified that you loved your grandmother. Is that correct? Yes, absolutely. Then why did you tell your roommate, Emily Bradford, and I quote, "It would be a blessing for everyone when she finally passed"? Ashley's face went pale. I was just venting. I was frustrated. I didn't mean it. You were frustrated that your grandmother was still alive. No, that's not what I meant. I was frustrated with my situation, with being unemployed, with everything going wrong. Chen pulled out a document. Miss Lambert, let's talk about your computer search history. On February 8th, you searched for digoxin overdose symptoms. On February 11th, you searched for how to induce kidney failure in elderly. On February 15th, you searched for poisons that mimic natural death. Can you explain those searches? Ashley stammered. I was researching for a story I was writing. A fiction story. You're a writer. I want to be. I was working on a murder mystery. Do you have any evidence of this story? A manuscript, notes, anything? I deleted it. It wasn't very good. How convenient, Chen said. Miss Lambert, isn't the truth that you researched these poisons because you were planning to use them on your grandmother? No, that's not true. And then you purchased digoxin, benzodiazepines, and other substances using your credit card, having them shipped to your grandmother's house. Correct. I didn't purchase those things. Someone must have stolen my credit card information. Yet you never reported the fraudulent charges to your credit card company, did you? I didn't notice them. I wasn't checking my statements carefully. Miss Lambert, these charges totaled over $300. You're telling this jury you didn't notice $300 in fraudulent charges? Ashley had no good answer. She stumbled through the rest of the cross-examination, contradicting herself, making excuses that didn't hold up to scrutiny. By the time Chen was done with her, Ashley's testimony had done more harm than good to her case. The jury could see she was lying, trying to worm her way out of responsibility. Closing arguments happened the next day. Hayes gave it his best shot, talking about reasonable doubt, about how the prosecution's case relied on circumstantial evidence, about how Ashley was a troubled young woman, but not a murderer. But Chen's closing argument was devastating. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen said, standing before the jury. This case is about greed, about betrayal, and about a young woman who valued money more than her grandmother's life. Ashley Lambert researched how to poison elderly people. She purchased the poisons. She hid them in her room. She systematically replaced her grandmother's medications with poison. She did all of this while pretending to care for Mrs. Holloway, while earning her trust, while reassuring her family that she was taking good care of Grandma. Mrs. Holloway nearly died. Her organs were failing. Her body was shutting down. If Dr. Chen hadn't ordered that toxicology screen, if the poison had gone undetected for even a few more weeks, Margaret Holloway would be dead. And Ashley Lambert would have gotten away with murder. The defendant wants you to believe this is all a misunderstanding, a coincidence, that someone else planted evidence, or that Mrs. Holloway was confused about her medications. But the evidence tells a different story. A clear story. A story of attempted murder. Don't let Ashley Lambert get away with trying to kill her grandmother. Hold her accountable for her actions. Find her guilty. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours during which I sat in the courthouse cafeteria with Thomas and Michael, drinking bad coffee and trying not to think about what would happen if the jury didn't convict. What if they believed Ashley's lies? What if they thought there was reasonable doubt? What if she walked free? Thomas kept reassuring me that wouldn't happen, that the evidence was too strong. But we'd all heard stories about juries doing unexpected things, about guilty people going free on technicalities. Finally, word came that the jury had reached a verdict. We hurried back to the courtroom, taking our seats in the gallery. Caroline slipped in at the last moment, sitting in the back row, as far from everyone as possible. Judge Melanchon entered. The jury filed in, their faces serious and unreadable. The foreperson, a middle-aged man in a polo shirt, stood up when the judge asked if they'd reached a verdict. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of attempted first-degree murder, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty." I heard Caroline gasp behind me. Ashley's head dropped to the table. Her attorney put his hand on her shoulder. "On the charge of administering poison with intent to kill, how do you find?"